Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Wallsend history story. This week is video number 15 in the series of Tales from the Past. As usual, this video covers a variety of stories about people, places and things that happened in the past in Wallsend. The stories are all from various different years and are in no particular order, and some stories may be longer than others. I hope you will enjoy it and find it interesting. In 1905, the then Mayor of Wallsend, Alderman Harrison, made a presentation of the honorary testimonial of the Royal Humane Society, inscribed on vellum and signed by the then Prince of Wales, to a Wallsend slipway apprentice who had saved another apprentice from drowning in the gut at Willington Quay. His name was George Laidler, and he was 15 years old, and he had saved a boy by the name of Benjamin Ryle, who was only 14 years old. It was explained that during the hot weather in July of that year, the boys at the slipway often bathed in the gut during their dinner hour, and on the 14th the alarm had been raised that Benjamin had got out of his depth and was struggling, having gone under several times. George quickly went to his assistance, diving into the water where Benjamin had last been seen, and he was able to pull him back up and out of the water, and luckily some of the other lads were able to revive Benjamin once he was out of the water. The managers at Wallsend Slipway were so impressed that they presented George with a silver watch, and the watch was inscribed as follows: "Presented by the workmen of the Iron Foundry Wallsend Slipway to George Laidler in appreciation of his bravery in saving a boy from drowning in Willington Gut on the 14th of July 1905. I have to admit it must have been quite a large watch to get all of that writing on it. George, who actually came from Cullercoats, was no stranger to saving people, as he had previously saved a child from drowning at the coast. The Mayor also presented George with a sovereign scarf pin. It has to be said that this was a nice story to include. It's always good to hear of someone saving a life. But I also have to say that the gut must have been a heck of a lot cleaner back in 1905, as I can't imagine anyone wanting to bathe or swim in it now. A strange little story that I came across dating from 1885 talks of the building work in the area of the Coach and Horses on Wallsend High Street. It said that some of the workmen had dug up several old coins, some of them dating back to the Georgian period, which was around 1714 to 1830. The article suggested that one of the coins was copper, and that it had made its way over to Jarrow in the pocket of one of the workmen. Sadly, there is no mention of what happened to the other coins that were found, and I do wonder where they are now and if anyone still has them, passed down from one family member to another. The article also said that they found some amazing fossils in Wallsend, but it was sadly lacking in detail, so we might never know what was found unless anyone listening knows anything more about this story. In 1941, a letter was printed in the local papers discussing Wallsend Green. The author, who did not give a name, said they were most amazed that the town council were refusing to allow the village green to be ploughed for the National Food Campaign. The author stated that the council had said they were unable to give permission as they did not own the land. Surely, the author said, it should have been put to the people of Wallsend to vote yes or no, but instead the council had simply said no, and how could they do this if they didn't own the land? Clearly the issue was never put to a vote, as I don't recall ever hearing that the village green had been used to grow vegetables during the war, unless anyone listening knows anything different. In 1893, an article appeared in the local papers about the possibility that the pit in Wallsend Park, known as Sea Pit or Gas Pit, may be about to be reopened. The article said that the shaft led to 3 seams, and it was thought that they contained tons and tons of unworked coal. In fact, the article said the amount in total could be something in the region of 22 million tons of coal. The shaft had eventually closed when it had become flooded many years before this, and I didn't find any further evidence that the shaft was ever reopened, but this part of the article was not really what caught my eye. Sea pit, better known at the time as gas pit because of the high levels of gas which had to be carried to the surface by a huge pipe which towered above the shaft, and this, it was said, blazed with burning gas day and night and could be seen for miles around. And an old tale told in the newspaper at the time suggested that some of the old men still living in the area of where the pipe used to be recalled the days of their childhood when they wanted to play football and other games at night in the area. And they stated that they could see all around them like it was daylight. Now that must have been great for the kids, but surely there must have been a fear of the gas pipe too, wondering that if it burned out, would there have been a huge explosion in the mine below? In some ways, I think I would have kind of liked to have seen the gas pipe burning in the night, but I think I'm also glad that I didn't live in a time when such a thing was needed. And would anyone listening have liked to have seen it, or liked to have lived at a time when such a thing had to burn off the gas from the mines where their family were working? In 1933, Mr. Stephen Long, who was at the time the farmer on the green in Wallsend, was fined 20 shillings for allowing his cows to graze on the green. He said that the cows and a horse had been let out and they were to be taken to the proper grazing fields, but it had been impossible for him to keep them off the village green, as it did not have a fence around it. This defence, however, did not save him from the fine, and it seems that the fine was not actually because the animals were eating the grass. It was because some of the cows had been leaning against some of the newly planted trees on the green, and it was feared that they would damage them. I have to admit that even though I know there was once a farm on the green and that animals were often seen being taken down Crowbank and back again, I still find it hard to imagine the green that we see today with that wonderful countryside farm smell and the sounds of cows and pigs and other animals rising up into the air. I wonder if anyone listening to this is old enough to remember seeing and hearing them on the green. In 1958, another little story also connected to the green was about the compulsory purchase order for the farm, which at the time belonged to the Woodgate family. Mary Woodgate, who had lived in the farm for around 35 years, and her sister Alice Bell, who no longer lived there, had inherited the farm from their father Stephen Long, who had died the previous year. Mary had not been able to carry on the farm on her own and had sold all of the animals, which included cows, horses, pigs and chickens, and also all of the equipment, resulting in a non-working farm. The two sisters had planned to sell the farm but had not yet done so. However, the council now planned to use the land for housing, and the sisters had a very short time in which to lodge a complaint against the compulsory purchase order. It also seems that those who lived on the green were none too happy about the idea either, as they were concerned about what would be built in its place. And a rumour was going round that the land would be used to build 5-storey flats, and the residents said they certainly hoped not, as this would not fit in with the look of the green. The council had been quite surprised at this rumour, as they said they had not even decided yet what they would build on the land, other than to say it would be residential and not any more factories. And it would seem that the council won the battle of the compulsory purchase order, but what price they paid for the farm and the surrounding land is not known, as I did not find any more details about that. The farm would be demolished just a short time later, and the bungalows we now know as Grange Close were built on the site. And I am sure those on the green who had been concerned about what was to be built would have been quite happy with these rather than the 5-storey flats they had thought might be built. In 1888, an article appeared in the local papers about Holy Cross ruins, and it would seem that although the last burial had taken place there in 1841, and the churchyard cemetery area was classed as being almost full, the cemetery had not been officially closed. So this meant that people could still be buried there if they so wished. This was, it would seem, worrying for the rector of Wallsend, as it was felt the grounds were in a neglected condition and not suitable for burials anymore, and this was also at a time before the bridge from Wallsend to Holy Cross was built, so no doubt the idea of travelling from St Peter's to the ruins was not a favourable one either. The Reverend Henderson of St Peter's Church had written to the Home Secretary about this, and it seemed that the Secretary of State had no idea at all that the ground was no longer being used. Mr Henderson was hoping to have the ground closed so that no one else could ask to be buried there. And an inquiry was held almost immediately, and it was quickly decided that Holy Cross Cemetery would now be officially closed and passed to the care of the local burial board. I have to admit to wondering why they felt the need to close it after such a long time. Had people suddenly been asking to be buried there, or was it just a worry that they would and it wouldn't be possible to do? Whatever the reason, at least we now know for sure that Holy Cross Churchyard closed for good in 1888. The last story this week is one from 1936, when a letter appeared in the local newspapers about a new home for the aged, as they were called in those days, which had been opened in Whitley Bay by means of converting a large empty house. The author of the letter, who called themselves Lover of Wallsend, said they had visited this home and thought it was fantastic. They went on to say that there was such a house standing empty on the village green in Wallsend, and it had been empty for years, and they felt this would be the ideal place for a home for the aged in Wallsend, if only this empty house could be bought by the council and converted like the one in Whitley Bay. I had to admit to a bit of a wry smile at the next part of the letter, where they had said they were sure that there must be dozens of nice old ladies in Wallsend who would like to live in such a house. I can't even begin to imagine the kind of backlash they would get if they wrote that kind of thing today. The outcome of the letter, of course, is known without research, and as no home for the aged was ever opened on the green. Though I do have to agree with the author on one point. Something like Wallsend Hall, which was not necessarily the place that they were talking about, would have made a fantastic retirement home, and I would have been quite happy to live there myself. I do hope that you have enjoyed these short little stories about Wallsend in the past, and that you have found them interesting. I do thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again very soon.